Good morning. Thank you for joining the Paul Call, sponsored by CenturyLink. My name is Dylan Keith, Policy Analyst at the Vegas Chamber. Before we get started, I'd like to go over some features of this call. If you're using the desktop or mobile Zoom applications, you may type a question at any time using the question pane at the bottom of the screen. We'll answer as many questions as possible at the end of the presentation. Likewise, you are highly encouraged to ask questions live. Use the hand raise button at the bottom of your screen, and as we open up for questions, we will call your name and unmute your line. Please ensure you are unmuted on your end, and please keep questions brief so we can get to as many as possible. And now, it is my pleasure to introduce Vegas Chamber President and CEO, Mary Beth Sewald.
Thank you very much, Dylan. I really appreciate that. Before we start, I also want to give a huge thank you to CenturyLink for generously sponsoring the Paul Call today. We are extremely grateful for their support at CenturyLink. Also, big thank you to everybody, all of our members who've signed up to be a chamber advocate. Serving as a chamber advocate is one of the biggest ways that you can help not only the Vegas Chamber, but of course, the entire business community as a whole. You know, during this current legislative session, as you all know, it's a very challenging session. And so it takes all of us to amplify our voices and to make sure that everybody's voices are heard. So for anybody who hasn't signed up already, there's still time to do so. You can go to vegaschamber.com to sign up again as a Vegas Chamber advocate, and we will walk you through all the things that you can do to help not only the chamber again, but your fellow business owners and business managers and leaders across the state. Also want to encourage everybody to sign up for and attend Legislative Day on April 6th. That's an event where we would typically be taking a big group to Carson City, but this year it's going to be virtual. This is a signature event that's open to all President's Club and advocacy members. Again, we're going to go virtual this year because the state capitol is closed, as pretty much everybody knows. So it's going to be a great opportunity for everybody to hear from our leaders in Carson City and to have invaluable conversations with elected officials and policymakers. And this year's attendees also will have an opportunity to meet with constitutional officers, legislative leadership, and of course, legislators as usual. So there will be a link to register tomorrow in tomorrow's rundown. So you definitely want to keep an eye out for that. And again, that's April 6th, Carson City Legislative Day, which will be a virtual event. Also want to thank all of our BizPack donors who are on the call today. Your gifts are so generous. But those gifts to BizPack make it possible for the chamber to support candidates and lawmakers who are committed to helping employers, employees, and of course, entrepreneurs. So we want to thank you again for donating to BizPack. We really, really appreciate that, and it means a lot. So now, without any further ado, I will turn it over to the Senior Vice President of Government Affairs at the Vegas Chamber, Mr. Paul Moradkin. Hey, Paul.
Hey, Mary Beth, and thank you, of course, for introduction and, of course, for the shout out to CenturyLink. Appreciate their ongoing support of the Paul Call that allows us to offer this benefit to our members. As Mary Beth indicated, there's a lot happening in the building. Even though it's closed, we have a lot to cover today, so we appreciate that you joining us today for this half hour. We're also joined today by Erica Valdrez, our PAC fundraiser, David Daslich, our Director of Government Affairs, and our Government Affairs Analyst, Dylan Keith, and they're going to share some updates with you today. As you know, the team is on the ground in Carson City, even it's a virtual format. So we have quite a bit of different information to share with you today. In regards to where we stand with BDRs and legislative topics, as of right now, there's about 1,137 BDRs that have been submitted to legislators to the Legislative Council Bureau for drafting. As of right now, we have 184 assembly bills as of last night that have been dropped, and 166 Senate bills that are now available for public review. That puts us at roughly about 350 bills or so for us to review and take positions on. The chamber goes through every single BDR and bill, and then we take a decision to the Government Affairs Committee for the different bills we engage on. It is a little slower in terms of bill drops as of right now. We are anticipating next week for them to drop quite a few. And we mean quite a few, maybe a couple hundred. So it'll be fast and furious to get through all the bills as the deadlines approach for the legislative process. In regards to the reopening of the building, as Mary Beth indicated, the legislative building has been closed and it continues to be closed but the majority of legislators and their staff and legislative council bureau staff have at least received their first vaccine shot. So we think that's a good signal that the building may reopen at some phase and approach starting in April. We're assuming, we're counting from 6 weeks from when folks get vaccinated from the legislative staff. So maybe mid-April is what they'll look at for a phased in approach, which could be a combination of appointments, it's limited committee attendance structure. So we'll keep you posted as that information becomes more available. But we are hopeful the building will reopen in maybe about 4 to 5 weeks. Bill deadlines are something that, as we're watching as bill drafts come out and bills are introduced, bill deadlines the bill deadline factors are starting to become a component of that. Legislators' bills have to be introduced by March 15th. And then first committee passage is an important deadline, which is April 9th, and first House passage is on the 20th. And that means if a bill is not exempt and it's just a policy bill, that bill will die if it doesn't get out of committee by April 9th. And if it doesn't get out first House passage by 20th, it cannot proceed unless it's been marked for exemption or if it's a fiscal bill. And then it restarts the process in the second House, which those deadlines are in May. So after the April deadline, the portfolio will shrink, of course, as a lot of the third and fourth tier bills, as I call them, will die, hopefully, and not come back. But these are important deadlines for folks to know. Sign die is May 31st, going to the morning of June 1st. That is dictated by the Constitution, as these deadlines work on a 120-day mandated legislative session. A couple of updates on constitutional amendments and topics. For those that are at their computers, we have AGR 1, which is regarding the mineral tax on mining. AGR 10, which is the minimum wage increase to employees. And it's currently being increased right now through NRS by bill that was passed last session. And SGR 1, which again has to do with mining. The chamber has opposed all three of these bills and will continue to do so. If they are heard again and pass this session by a simple majority vote, these items will go to the voters on the November 2022 general election ballot. Because it's gone through two legislative sessions, it only requires one vote of the people. So we'll keep you updated on those constitutional amendments as they proceed throughout the session. A lot of folks are asking what is happening regarding the sales tax initiative and the gaming tax initiative that one of the teacher unions brought forward. They are required to be heard within the first 40 days of the legislative session. If they're going to hear them, we only have about 600 more days left. If they're not, excuse me, if they're not heard and they're not taking action, then it goes to the voters in November 2022. They are NRS changes, so it only takes one vote of the voters to change it. It doesn't take two, like it does for constitutional process. So the chamber will continue to oppose both those bills if they come forward to the legislative body. Right now, the chamber is tracking 597 BDRs or bills. We're waiting on some collective bargaining bills, healthcare patient protection, AB 45. It's an insurance commissioner bill. It basically says the insurance commissioner can revoke your license without a hearing. So that is a procedural concern to the chamber, of course. And definitely we'll continue to express our opposition to the bill. Assemblywoman Torres is going to release a bill on employer retaliation regarding COVID and vaccines. So we'll take a close look at that as language becomes available. She's also writing a bill on right to repair, and that's a bill we're going to have to see what the language looks like and what that exactly defines it, what right to repair and what products are involved with that. There's SB 107, which is an employment and workers' comp bill that we are opposing. Right now, an employer can be sued by a former employee for wrongful termination within a 2-year window. This bill, as originally drafted, would allow 4 years. It's standard across the country by more states than not. That's 2 years. And now their amendment now would include workers' comp. So we're opposed to that. Assemblyman Flores has a BDR regarding business liability and standards. We're going to keep a close eye on that and communicate with his office. Assemblyman B. Duran has introduced AB 124, which is a pay equity bill. And it does a couple things. One, it codifies what happened in a recent ruling by the Ninth Circuit Court back in end of 2020. And it says that employers can no longer ask for wage history. That's a concession that one can make per se, because if it's court law, that's a standing of the land. But this would also allow for class action lawsuits. So if you have a position that's been opened and someone feels they've been racially targeted, not been hired in the position or been impacted negatively, then all those applicants in theory who fit into that category could file class action lawsuit. Typically, Chamber has problems with class action lawsuits, reasonable attorney fees, all that, because it ends up being extremely burdensome to a business. So we'll keep you posted on that bill. AB 47, I call it a non-disclosure bill, but it's really three parts. It's non-disclosure, non-compete bill. It's a merger acquisition bill, and it is a healthcare provisions bill. Three large topics in one bill. It's in the same chapter, so they can do that. This bill has been going through many stakeholder and working groups. It's still not there. I don't know if it will be able to get there, but as of now, the chamber is still opposed to the bill. In all recognition of the Attorney General's office, they have had a lot of meetings. We have made progress on the non-compete components, but on the merger acquisition piece, there's still a lot of concern on the healthcare piece. Senator Dina Neal is working on an LET bill that would tighten some of the exemptions on who is charged LET, which is a live entertainment tax, to include sports teams and adjust the nonprofit exemption that currently exists for events over 7,500. You're like, well, what event could have 7,500 that it would fall into? Well, a lot of nonprofits have marathons or multi-day fundraisers or events like that. Opportunity Villages Magical Forest is a good example of that. So those are items that we're working on as of right now. There are a couple other topics. We're waiting on a bill to see if it will be offering predictive scheduling, which would be kind of in conflict with Nevada's right to work status. There are several bills changing the face of GoEd and the abatement process. Dave is going to provide in a few moments an updates on rent control and evictions. Fiscal home rule, there's two bills up today, SB 11 and 73 from the city of Reno. The chamber will be opposing that because the precedence it would allow for cities to have taxation oversight authority. The chamber is a Dillon Rule supporter. Nevada is a Dillon Rule state, has been since the statehood. Dillon Rule is based off a court case in the late 1800s, is codified in Nevada law. We're Dillon Rule state, and the chamber does not believe cities need to have fiscal taxation authority. Someone, Leslie Cohen, is working on a climate change emission standards natural gas bill. They are still not been released yet, but this is a bill that's a great concern to Southwest Gas and residents and consumers. And we'll talk about it in a few minutes. And then finally, we have the opportunity zones that many of you have heard the Governor Sisolak has released at the concept, still waiting on the bill language. It is an idea that corporations could basically create, and generalize this at a very high level, that they can create their own county governments and cities and so forth. So a innovative idea, but it will come down to the bill language to see how that will work in terms of management, control, water rights, the whole thing. So we'll keep you posted on this. As I mentioned, Assemblywoman Cohen is working with the Natural Resource Defense Council in New York regarding the elimination or reduction of natural gas in Nevada. Nevada several years ago got rid of coal burning plants. So many folks have shifted to either electrification or natural gas. This bill would reduce the percentage of Nevadans that could use natural gas from the service perspective. Clark County, as you know, has Southwest Gas. A lot of folks use gas for water, heating, cooking, appliances. This would start phasing it out within a year, and within 30 years, 95% of their current existence would be out of market. There is a concern from the chamber about cost for retrofitting, impact on home affordability, impact on business, and also an impact in terms of the stress would place on the electrification grid in Nevada. A couple bills that the chamber is actively opposing is AB 45, which is an insurance bill, AB 47, which is on a fair trade practice bill, and AB 61, which is a price gouging bill. There's a lot of work that's going on in these bills. None of these bills are where they need to be. So there's a lot of work occurring with that. Senate Bill 75 is an interesting one that members should be aware about. It's been brought forward by Dieter. And this bill would change the way how we calculate unemployment insurance in the state through the fund, the trust fund that everybody pays into. Right now, it's done over a 10-year average. They want to do a 20-year average. They want to be able to do e-notifications to employers, which that part's fine. But there's also an amendment that's been proposed by another teachers union that if an employee is 9, 10, or 11-month school district employee, that they would be able to collect unemployment for those months. The Chamber's Government Affairs Committee is taking the position to oppose that. You're talking about in Clark County alone, $48 million that's going to have to be found, and it can't come out of central administration. It would have to come out of the school sites. So, for example, let's say Sierra Vista has 20 employees that will qualify for unemployment. The school would have to come up with that money, and our position is that we don't want to take money out of the classroom. That's not the right thing to do. These employees take a job knowing it's 9, 10, or 11 months. We don't think they should qualify for unemployment insurance. Then in a bill we are supporting, Senator James Orenthal, SB 95. It really cleans up the business loss section in NRS. The purpose of this is to keep us competitive with Delaware. Many of you know from the registered agent point of view, Nevada and Delaware are kind of the gold standard. So both states are always competing for that designation. So this is a bill we are supporting. As I mentioned, B. Duran has AB 124, which currently we're opposed to, trying to fix it. That is a bill that would impact quite a few of our members across the board. They were tracking some other bills that are BDR still from Susan Martinez and Assemblyman Sarah Peters from up north. I'm now going to turn it over to David Daslich, who's become our resident expert on evictions and summary evictions. And he will talk to you a little about AB 141 that was just heard. So thanks for joining us, David. And AB 161, which has not been scheduled for a hearing yet. So David, turn it over to you for a few moments.
Thank you, Paul. As Paul said, we just got done the hearing with AB 141 in Assembly Judiciary. That is a bill being brought from Assemblyman Howard Watts with the support of Legal Aid Southern Nevada. It does two things primarily. Section 1 of the bill would increase the notification periods for landlords looking to evict tenants for non-payment to 30, 60, and 90 days respectively, depending on the length of tenancy, and has another section sealing all records of evictions during the pandemic. Those both present some pretty significant obstacles and cost increases for landlords, so we testified in opposition. We've been working with the Apartment Association and the Realtors Association in continued negotiations with Assemblyman Watts. Assemblyman Yeager stated to us before today's hearing that at this point, because of the backlog of bills, they're having to push some of the more controversial bills forward to have hearings and then delay any further amendments and or negotiations until farther on in the session. So conceptually, at least, this hearing is just meant to be the first step towards further negotiations. Unfortunately, at this point, the Apartment Association and Realtors have offered to move to the middle when it comes to record sealing and accommodate the sealing of any records of anybody who has filed the CDC hardship declaration, which is a pretty big step for them. However, that was rejected by Legal Aid. So we are hopeful that going forward, we'll be able to work with Assemblyman Watts to come to some sort of accommodation. However, as it was introduced today for the hearing, the chamber was in opposition. Assembly Bill 161 by Assemblywoman Torres is designed to end summary evictions. We are hoping that one will not get a hearing if we are able to work with Assemblyman Watts on his evictions bill. However, if it does come forward, we anticipate being in strong opposition. We know that there are going to be other bills that deal with renters, evictions, and the housing market in general, especially affordable housing. So we're keeping an eye on that. Our goal from the chamber perspective is to keep the housing supply in Las Vegas and Clark County as a whole accessible, well-stocked, and keep the availability of market rate housing affordable to the extent possible. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, David. That's a great update. And just to that point, the reason there's also concern with these bills is as more Californians move to Nevada, they're buying homes that were originally rental properties, for example, and those become owner occupied. So those units come off the market. So great update, David. Thank you. We'll move on to a couple other bills. The chamber is also opposing SB 18, which deals with governance of our members that are overseen by the PUC because of the extraordinary fines. It would increase to about $20 million cap. As I mentioned a little earlier, the chamber is opposing this afternoon these two fiscal home rule bills in the city of Reno. We are monitoring currently two property tax bills from the League of Cities, SB 64 and SB 10. Neither one of these have been scheduled for hearings yet. When they do, the chamber will take a formal position regarding these two property tax bills. I'm going to next turn it over to Dylan Keith. Dylan is our lead staffer on the Southern Nevada Forum, and he'll share with folks a quick update on the 5 different committees and where bills are at. Dylan?
Thank you, Paul. So as many of you know, the Southern Nevada Forum is our bipartisan work that we do with legislators during the interim to fix some of the issues that we have, especially in Southern Nevada. So for education, we wanted to fix the teacher pipeline, and we did several initiatives to make sure that we're having enough staffing and the quality of staffing that we deserve down in Southern Nevada, so we can start to move up in the teaching in those ranks as far as education goes, and that's SB 27. It was recently heard about 2 weeks ago, so we're looking at the work session on that, so we can get it over to the other house and move that forward. Next is a BDR focused on the school funding formula. It was SB 543 from the last session. We're looking at just a couple different tweaks that were proposed by Senator Modennis and Senator Woodhouse to make sure that it focuses more on the students and to make sure that those dollars are actually getting into the classrooms and benefiting our students. Last were capital and projects on many of the Nevada System of Higher Education colleges, including the medical college at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, which was actually endorsed by the governor during his State of the State address, as well as the Nevada State College STEAM building and the CSN Sahara West Center. So quite a few different proposed projects there, but it's definitely good that we're looking at the medical school, as that's been a long initiative of the Vegas Chamber, and to have the governor's support on that is definitely beneficial. Next was economic development. In this committee for BDR S876, we're looking at workforce training, especially during the pandemic with so many people losing their jobs. We wanted to make sure that our community colleges were focused on retraining our workforce for tomorrow's jobs, so we can diversify and attract new businesses to Nevada and actually get that economic diversity that we've been striving for. With BDR 925, we wanted to establish a dual credit / high school college program where students can get college credit and high school credit at the same time. Doing this, they will be able to either take classes in their high school, which will count as like English 101, as well as their junior and senior year English classes, or they can actually leave their high schools and go to either Nevada State College or CSN and actually complete the rest of their high school diploma and also get their associates within those 2 years of their regular high school junior and senior year. And with BDR S868, we were looking at early childhood education. This was to fund Nevada State College's program for their early childhood education program to get better teachers, to make sure that students are taken care of, that we're actually addressing that school and readiness gap, and that we're getting students prepared so that they're reading by 3 and they can actually start reading to learn when they need to. In the next committee, we were looking at good governance, which was all focused on grants. Paul, could you go to the next slide for me, please? This was also another initiative that was in the governor's state of the state. Currently, we are most in need of grants out of many of the 50 states. We're at the top of the need and the bottom of that list for what dollars we get. So we want to make sure we're getting our fair share of those federal dollars and we can put them to good use. Currently, there's only 2 people in our grants office. We want to make sure that we're properly staffed, they have the right resources, and that we have offices in every region of the state to make sure that we're getting the dollars we need, we're getting the dollars to where they need to be, and to get our fair share of those federal dollars. In healthcare, we were largely focused on the doctor shortage. So we wanted to get a good doctor pipeline, especially to Southern Nevada. Some of the biggest issues that we were facing, especially with BDR 186, is the credentialing. Now, this isn't making it easier. It's just for doctors that are already credentialed. They're ready to go, but we want to get them into the state. And so a lot of them, it's a complicated process for Nevada. They're skipping us to go to Arizona, Utah, and we want to make sure that they're coming to Nevada so that we can address that shortage. With BDR 5425, we want to increase the retention of medical caregivers. A lot of the smaller claims by patients that aren't super serious were being put in the same category as very, very serious claims. So we want to make sure that there's tiers, basically, so that we're not chasing away the doctors we already have. We shouldn't be compiling small claims with large claims. It just doesn't make sense. BDR 614 was also to make sure that we're keeping doctors and attracting new doctors from out of state. And last, in the Transportation Committee, we were all focused on microtransit. So for some reason, we were left out of this bill last session. They specifically excluded Clark County. Washoe County recently started their microtransit service. This just basically allows those at need to receive smaller specialized transit to where they need to go. So if old folks get to the doctor's offices, just makes it a little easier for our population, and it benefits the Southern Nevada community overall. And if you have any questions, please, regarding any of the Southern Nevada Forum topics, please feel free to email me at dkeith@vegaschamber.com.
Great, thanks, Dylan. Also, this month's March issue at the Business Voice cover stories of the Southern Nevada Forum. So it's currently at vegaschamber.com. So check out that story and feel free to follow up with Dylan if you have any questions. Finally, we'll turn over to Erica Valdrez, our PAC fundraiser. Erica?
Thank you, Paul. Good afternoon, everyone. So each year, elected officials spend months considering proposed legislation that could affect businesses' competitiveness, its ability to create jobs, and the bottom line. From legislation on unemployment laws to taxes, the Vegas Chamber is actively involved in every major issue facing the state's business community. And the fate of that legislation can depend on how many pro-business candidates are in office. That's why it's so important that businesses have a strong political action committee. BizPAC, the bipartisan political action committee of the Vegas Chamber, makes contributions to pro-jobs, pro-growth candidates who believe in businesses' rights to compete on an equal basis in the marketplace. BizPAC's strength lies in the involvement of business professionals like you. We all have a stake in the future of our state's businesses and economy, and that future can be dramatically altered through legislation and regulation. That is why business leaders contribute to BizPAC, to support those candidates who support businesses. So for a growing, vibrant economy that leads to good jobs and strong communities, Nevada businesses need BizPAC. So if you're interested in more information on BizPAC, please contact me at 702-245-8465 or at evaldrez@vegaschamber.com. Thank you.
Thanks, Erica, and appreciate that update again. Thank you to our PAC members who support the program, of course. So I know we have a few minutes left, Dylan, so let's see if we have any questions from members today.
Thanks, Paul. Looks like we have two in the queue right now. From the first anonymous attendee, is there any traction behind the 9, 10, and 11-month employment proposal? Seems like a ridiculous piece of legislation.
There is traction on the bill. The committee chair does support it, but it will have a large fiscal note, and it also requires a 2/3 vote of the legislative body because of the changes that would have in the formula calculation. So it would take some Republicans to vote for the bill, which at this point they've indicated they will not support the bill. So it absolutely has, can move through the process, at least to the floor. If there are amendments that take out that 2/3 requirement and just becomes a straight policy bill, that could also happen. But to the member's point, though, a 9, 10, 11-month employee knows what they're applying for, and that should not be at the cost of taxpayers or children for that unemployment insurance for those 2 to 3 months.
And for the next question, we had it from Josh Halderman. First of all, thanks for what you guys are doing. It is much appreciated. What is the benefit of eliminating natural gas usage?
So the argument is that natural gas is not a clean type of energy, and that electrification is the cleanest type. But we would argue that's natural gas is a clean energy fuel. So based on that concept and what we talked about, the chamber is opposing the bill. We don't believe in we don't agree with what they're proposing, based on that assumption. So Dylan, do you have any other questions from members today as we wrap up today?
No, not seeing anybody else with their hands up.
All right, great. Let's go back to Mary Beth for some closing remarks then. Thank you everybody for joining us today. Mary Beth?
All right, Paul, thank you guys. Thanks everybody to the entire team at the Vegas Chamber. As you can see, I was just sitting here thinking what a difference these Paul calls are with the ability now to be virtual through video as opposed to the ones we used to just do over the phone. So now you get to see the PowerPoints and the real work that this team is doing. So really appreciate everybody attending today. Also want to remind everybody to please want to encourage everybody to join us on Legislative Day or for Legislative Day on April 6th. Again, that's the signature event that will take you to Carson City virtually, at least. There's going to be a link to register in tomorrow's rundown email, so you're not going to want to miss that. And go to vegaschamber.com for more information. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Take care. Thanks, everybody.